What if Jon Snow's Targaryen blood woke a dragon on his 10th Nameday? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The morning of Jon Snow's Nameday begins the way most mornings at Winterfell begin, with grey sky and the ring of steel. Jon and Robb circle each other in the training yard, blunted swords in hand, their breath rising in small white clouds above the frost-hardened ground. They are both 10 years old, near enough that neither keeps count of the days between them. Robb is taller by half a head and already broader in the shoulders, but Jon is quicker on his feet, and they know each other's rhythms the way only two boys who have grown up sparring together could. They have been doing this since they were old enough to grip a hilt. Theon Greyjoy leans against the fence post with his arms crossed, watching them with the expression he always wears when he is trying to appear bored and succeeding poorly. He is 15 and counts himself a man, though he has nowhere else to be on a grey northern morning. 10 years old, he says, when Jon stumbles and Robb presses his advantage. You would think a bastard would at least get better at fighting on his own Nameday. Robb glances over without slowing. Shut your mouth, Theon. He says it without heat, the way you say something to someone you have long since stopped expecting to listen. Jon does not look at Theon at all. He drops his weight lower, finds a different line, and comes back at Robb from an angle he has not tried yet this morning. Robb has to take a quick step back to keep his balance. There it is. That is how it goes between them, back and forth and back again, until the bells of Winterfell call them in from the cold. The great hall is warm that evening, in the way that Winterfell is always warm, heated from below by the hot springs running through the castle's ancient bones. Candles and torches line the long tables. The household has gathered. A Nameday feast, even a bastard boy's, calls for extra ale and a good joint of venison, and the hall smells of both. Ned Stark sits at the head of the table with the steady, unhurried presence of a man who does not need to announce himself. He has his eldest son's build in him still, that same long face and dark colouring, the grey eyes that give nothing away until they decide to. When Jon comes in from the yard and finds his seat near the lower end of the table, Ned says his name, and there is something genuine in the way he says it, something that does not waver. Catelyn Stark sits at her husband's right hand. She speaks warmly to her own children, filling cups, listening to Sansa tell some small, careful story about her embroidery, keeping half a watch on Arya, who is already attempting to slide under the bench and vanish. When her eyes pass over Jon, they carry no particular expression. It is not malice that she shows, not any longer. It is simply distance, the careful blankness of a woman who has had 10 years to practice looking at her husband's bastard son without letting her face reveal what that practice costs her. Jon eats quietly. He watches Robb laughing at something Theon says about the stablemaster's dog. He watches Ned's face move when he speaks to his children, the small ease that comes into it, the loosening around the eyes. Jon is not bitter about any of this, or he tells himself he is not. He knows where his place is. He has always known, the way you know the shape of a room you grew up sleeping in, every edge and corner of it without having to look. He slips out before the second course arrives. The Godswood is quiet at this hour. Jon crosses the dark yard and pushes through the low wooden gate, and the hush of the place settles over him the moment he steps inside. The ancient heart tree stands at the center of the grove, its white bark pale as bone in the darkness, its carved face worn by centuries of looking. Red sap lines the grooves of those hollow eyes and that long, open mouth, catching what little light the clouded sky lets through. Jon has come here since he was small enough that the roots seemed like walls around him. He has never prayed in words. He does what the Starks do, which is to sit beside the weirwood and be still and let the silence hold him for a while. The red leaves overhead stir without any wind he can feel. He stays longer than he meant to. When he finally rises and makes his way back through the castle, he goes by the lower passage out of habit, the one that runs past the door to the crypts. He does not know why he stops at the top of the stair. He has come down here before, many times, to stand among the stone kings with their long, stark faces and their iron swords resting across their laps. There is something in the crypts that settles him, something that does not ask him who he is or where he came from. He takes a torch from the bracket on the wall and goes down. The stone kings stand in their alcoves the way they always have, silent and patient, watching the passage with their carved eyes. Jon walks past the oldest ones whose names he cannot remember, into the deeper chambers that smell more of earth and less of the castle above. At the end of a side passage, he stops. There is a chest against the far wall. He has always assumed it held Ned's old campaign gear, things brought back from the years of the rebellion and stored down here out of the way. He has walked past it 12 times without thought. Tonight, the chest is warm. Jon crouches in front of it and puts his hand flat against the wood. The warmth comes from inside, steady and even, like a fire that has been banked for the night, but not gone out yet. He stays still for a moment. Then he lifts the lid. Inside, wrapped carefully in a folded length of old Stark wool, is a stone. It is roughly the size of his head. It is grey-black, threaded through with veins of deep red that catch the torchlight and seem to shift when he moves the flame closer. He has never seen anything like it. He has no name for it. Neither does anyone else in Winterfell, because no one alive in Westeros has had reason to know what such a thing is for a very long time now. He reaches in and picks it up with both hands. It is heavier than it looks and warmer than the cloth that wrapped it. The red veins pulse once, faintly, and then again, like something deep inside drawing breath. Jon's hands tighten around it. He does not drop it. He does not move. He sits very still in the cold dark of the crypts with the torchlight swaying around him, and the stone kings in their alcoves, and the thing in his hands moves a third time, slow and certain as a heartbeat. He sets it down carefully in the wool. He steps back. He keeps stepping back until the wall is at his shoulders. He stands there for a long time. Then he picks up his torch, climbs the stairs, crosses the dark yard, and goes to bed without a word to anyone. 3 days after his name day, Jon goes back to the crypts. He tells himself it is only curiosity, but his feet carry him there in the hour after the evening meal. He takes a torch from the bracket and goes down to the side chamber, and he knows before he reaches the chest that something has changed. He can feel the warmth from several feet away, pressing outward through the wood the way heat presses through the walls of an oven. And there is the crack. It runs the full length of the stone's widest face, a thin dark line splitting the grey-black surface from one end to the other. The red veins on either side of it pulse with a light that doesn't quite need the torch anymore. Jon crouches in front of the chest and watches the crack for a long time. Nothing happens. Then the crack shifts and widens, and Jon gets up and goes back to bed and does not sleep at all. He comes back the next evening, and the one after that. On the 4th night, he does not go to the great hall for supper. He brings a heel of bread down with him and sits on the cold floor and watches the chest glow in the dark, and he is still sitting there when the hatching finally comes. It starts with a sound like green wood splitting in a fire. Then the top of the stone gives way all at once. The pieces fall back, and something small and dark and wet pulls itself free. It is barely bigger than a cat. It is black from the tip of its nose to the end of its tail, scaled in a way that catches the torchlight and seems to swallow it rather than give it back. Its wings are folded tight against its sides and still glistening. It gets its legs under itself and raises its head, and when it opens its eyes they are red, not the red of blood or fire, but the red of something ancient coming awake and finding what it was looking for. Jon does not move. The creature makes no sound. It does not hiss or cry out. It simply looks at him with those red eyes the way a hunting dog looks at the person it belongs to, and then it steps to the edge of the chest and stops, waiting. Jon reaches out his hand. He cannot explain why. He reaches it out the way you extend a hand toward something in a dream, without deciding to, without knowing what you are expecting. The creature steps from the chest onto his palm, all 4 feet at once, and its weight is more than he expected, and its feet are warm against his skin, warm in the way that should raise blisters, warm in the way that should make him pull back. He does not pull back. His skin does not redden. His hand does not burn. He sits there in the cold of the crypts with a dragon in his hand and the torchlight swaying on the stone walls around him, and he cannot find a single thought that fits what he is looking at. He is still sitting there when the light at the top of the stairs shifts from black to the grey of early dawn. Ned Stark comes down into the crypts because something has been pulling at him since before he woke, some feeling he cannot name that has been sitting in his chest like a stone since the early hours. It is not unlike the feeling the godswood sometimes gives him, old and wordless and insistent. He takes the stairs without stopping for a torch because he knows every step of these crypts by feel. He stops in the doorway of the side chamber. Jon is sitting with his back against the far wall, and there is a small black creature curled in his lap with its head on its forelegs. Jon looks up. The creature does not move. It keeps its eyes closed, the red just barely visible beneath the lids. Ned stands there for a long time. He has a long face that does not give much away at the best of times, and it gives nothing away now. He looks at Jon. He looks at the thing in Jon's lap. He breathes in slowly through his nose and takes one step into the chamber. "What is it?" Jon says. He is not quite asking. He has been sitting here all night with that question, and he already knows the answer. He just needs someone else to say it. Ned crouches down in front of him and looks at the creature from close range. It opens one eye and looks back at him, and then closes it again. "It is a dragon," Ned says. Jon is quiet for a moment. "How?" he says. "Not yet." Ned's voice is level, patient, the same voice he uses in the training yard when Jon is doing something wrong and needs to be told once. "Not down here, Jon. Not now." He puts his hand on Jon's shoulder briefly and then stands. "You will tell no one," he says. "Not Robb. Not the Maester. Not a servant. Not a stable hand. Not anyone in this castle. You will not speak of this above ground." "I swear it," Jon says. "On the old gods." Ned holds his eyes. "Say the words." "I swear it on the old gods." Ned nods once. He looks at the creature in Jon's lap for another moment, and then he turns and goes back up the stairs into the morning. That evening, Ned goes to the godswood alone. He sits before the weirwood heart tree in the dark and the cold, and the carved face looks down at him with its hollow eyes and its long open mouth, and he does not pray because the Starks never have. He thinks about Lyanna. He thinks about a tower in dawn, and a young woman burning up from the inside out, and the thing she pressed into his arms before she stopped speaking. He took it north without thinking, and he put it in the crypts and did not look at it again. He hid the boy. He kept the promise. He kept it so well that the boy does not know who he is. But the dragon knew. The dragon has been knowing for 10 years in the dark below the castle, waiting. Not for Ned. Not for any Stark by blood. For the boy with Rhaegar's blood in him, walking past that chest morning after morning, on his way to pray by the old dead kings. 10 years of waiting, and then Jon turned 10 years old, and went down into the dark alone. And that was enough. Ned sits with that thought, while the red leaves move overhead without any wind. The next morning, he rises before the cook, and goes to the cold room off the kitchen, and takes a cut of raw meat, wraps it in cloth, and carries it down to the crypts. The dragon is awake when he arrives, sitting upright in the middle of the chamber floor, watching the stairs. Jon is already there, sitting against the wall. Ned unwraps the meat and holds it out. The dragon takes it from his hand with careful, deliberate precision and retreats to the far corner. "I told the kitchen boy it was for my dog," Ned says. Jon looks at him. "You don't have a dog?" "No." After the dragon finishes eating, Ned and Jon carry it together through the old iron door at the end of the passage, the one that leads to the oldest chambers where the torches have not been lit in years. The dragon goes without protest, watching each of them in turn with those red eyes. Ned fits the iron door into its frame and drops the bar into its bracket. The bar is heavy and the fit is tight, and no sound from inside will carry up to the castle. "Come up for breakfast?" Ned says. "Yes, my lord," Jon says. Neither of them says anything else. They go up into the light, and behind the iron door in the dark, the first dragon in 140 years settles down to sleep. Ned Stark does not sleep well in the days that follow the hatching. He rises early, speaks little at the high table, and moves through his duties as Lord of Winterfell with the same careful, measured attention he always brings to them. No one who watches him would see anything wrong. That is by design. Ned has carried worse things quietly than this, and he knows how to keep his face. What he cannot do is decide what to do next. On the third night after he moved the dragon to the sealed chamber, he sends for Winterfell's Maester. The old man comes to the solar with his chain clicking and his lamp held high, blinking at the late hour. Ned closes the door and bolts it. He does not speak right away. He goes to the inner room, where he has kept the creature since bringing it up from the crypts, opens the door, and steps back. The dragon is the size of a large cat now. Its black scales have dried and settled into overlapping plates that catch the candlelight like polished armor. It sits on the folded wool Ned set out for it, and watches the Maester arrive with those red eyes, alert and patient. The old man goes still in the doorway. He stands there for a long breath. Then he walks into the room and crouches down and looks at the dragon from arm's length, and the dragon looks back. "7 save us," the Maester says quietly. He does not say it the way men say it when they are startled. He says it the way men say it when they understand, all at once, the full weight of what they are looking at. "I need 2 things from you," Ned says. "Your counsel and your silence." The Maester's hands are shaking. He folds them in his lap to keep them still. "You have both, my lord," he says. "You have always had both." They sit together in that small room for a long time, the candle burning low between them. Ned tells him what he needs to tell him, which is not everything, but enough. The Maester listens without interrupting. When Ned finishes, the old man is quiet. "A dragon will not bond to just anyone," the Maester says. His voice is careful and exact, the way it is when he is working through something he already knows, but needs to say aloud to be sure of. I have read every account that survives from the old histories, every record of a bond ever formed. The creature bonds to one bloodline. There has only ever been one bloodline. He does not say the name. He does not look up when he says it. The name hangs in the air between them without being spoken, the way a name will when both men already know it, and neither of them wants to be the one to put it on their tongue in a bolted room in the north. Yes, Ned says. The Maester nods once and says nothing more about it. That night, after the Maester has gone, Ned goes to the Godswood. The yard is dark, and the gate to the Godswood swings in without a sound. Ned crosses the soft ground and sits before the weirwood heart tree the way he has sat before it 100 times, and the carved face looks down at him with its hollow eyes and its long, open mouth, and the red staining the grooves of it like something permanent. He does not pray. He sits. He thinks about the man who was with him at the end. The one other man, alive, who stood outside that tower door in dawn, and heard what happened inside, and carried that knowledge north with him. There is only one other person in the world who knows what Lyanna pressed into Ned's arms before she closed her eyes, and that man is alive somewhere in the world right now, and Ned has not spoken to him in years. He cannot send a raven. Ravens can be intercepted, can be read. He will not put this in words that can be held and carried to the wrong hands. He speaks to the weirwood instead. He tells it what the dragon chose. He asks it nothing, because the Starks have never asked the Godswood for answers, only given it their silence and their truth. The red leaves hang without moving. The face looks down at him. He stays until the cold drives him inside. Catelyn notices before the week is out. She sees it first in small ways. Ned excusing himself after supper, rather than sitting with the family in the great hall. Ned's step on the stair when she is already lying awake, headed somewhere below. She asks him one morning at the breakfast table, lightly, as if she is asking about the weather. Is there something troubling him? Is there news he has not shared? Ned looks at her across the table and says there is nothing she need concern herself with, and says it in the quiet, level way that means the subject is finished. She has learned his face in 10 years. She knows when he is telling her the truth, and when he is telling her only the part of it he has decided she may have. She does not press him. She has learned that pressing Ned Stark on a subject he has closed is like pressing on stone. She watches and says nothing, and keeps her own counsel. Below the broken tower, Jon spends every night he can with the dragon. It is the size of a dog now, wings still furled but broader, neck longer, tail moving with a slow swing when it paces. Its black scales shine in torchlight, deep and dark as still water. Jon sits with it in the corner of the sealed chamber, with his back against the cold stone, and the creature curled beside him, its head in his lap, and he thinks about what to call it. He has been thinking about it for days. He does not want to give it a name from the household, something ordinary. It is not ordinary. He has heard the old servants tell stories about the age of dragons, passed down until they were thin as smoke. One of them had a word in it, a name given to things that lived in shadow and were not seen until they moved. He says it aloud in the dark. The dragon opens its eyes. The red catches the light. It looks at him. He says it again. The dragon lifts its head. Jon puts his hand on the side of its neck and feels the warmth of it, steady and deep, and he says the word a third time quietly, like something settled and decided. That is the name. The old word for shadow. The dragon knows it from the first time he speaks it. Ned goes down to the crypts one last time that week. He goes without a torch, in the dark, because he knows the way. He walks past the rows of stone kings, the long stark faces, the iron swords across their laps. He goes to the far end of the passage and stands where the chest used to sit, and he looks at the empty alcove for a long time. He thinks about what the dragon chose. He thinks about a boy with dark hair and grey eyes who was born in a tower in Dawn and raised in Winterfell and does not know his own name. The dragon was in this room for 10 years. It waited. It did not move, did not wake, did not stir for any Stark who walked past it in the dark. And then Jon turned 10 and came down alone and put his hands on the stone. Ned has not told him who he is. He is not sure he can. He only knows that the dragon did not wait 10 years by accident, and that whatever Lyanna meant when she pressed the egg into his arms with her last breath, she meant it for Jon. He stands in the dark with the stone kings and the cold and the silence of Winterfell above him, and he does not have an answer yet. He is not sure he ever will. The crisis comes 3 weeks after the hatching. Jon finds it first. He goes down to the sealed chamber in the crypts the way he does every night before bed, and he stops at the iron door because he can hear the sound before he lifts the bar. A low, rhythmic scraping, like stone grinding against stone. He gets the door open and holds his torch high and sees the dragon pressed against the vault wall with its wings half spread, one tip flat against the ceiling, the other bent at a wrong angle. The dragon turns its head and looks at Jon, and the red eyes carry something that he has no word for, only the understanding that this is not something it will endure for long. Jon crouches beside it and puts his hand on the side of its neck. The way he has learned calms it, and speaks to it in a low voice. The dragon goes still under his hand, but the walls do not move, and by morning, Ned is going to have to do something about that. He sends a boy to fetch his father before dawn. Ned comes down, takes one look at the dragon in the vault, and makes the decision without having to think about it. He goes back up and wakes 2 of the household guards, men he has known long enough to trust with something he cannot unknow, and he gives them their instructions in the dark of his solar. They listen without expression. When he finishes, they nod. They are Northmen. They understand what it means when a lord tells you something and doesn't explain it. 2 hours before dawn, the 4 of them cross Winterfell's inner yard in the dark. Ned and one guard go first, carrying shuttered lanterns that let only a thin line of light fall across the frozen ground. Jon comes behind, with the dragon walking at his heel. The dragon steps exactly where Jon steps, following something older than any training. The second guard brings up the rear and does not look back. Neither of the guards speak. Their breath rises in small white clouds and vanishes. The broken tower stands at the edge of Winterfell's inner ward, its top gone since before any of them were born, its stones frost-darkened and sealed shut. Ned lifts the bar from the outer door, and the hinges groan once as it swings open. Inside, the air is cold and smells of old stone and nothing else. There is space here. The floor is wide, and the ceiling reaches high to the broken edge of the ruined roof, where the night sky is visible, and the dragon steps inside and lifts its head, and the red eyes move across the dark space with something that might be recognition or relief, or only the animal alertness of a creature finding its ground. It stretches its wings. The sound fills the tower the way sailcloth fills with wind, a deep, leathery rush that carries all the way to the broken edge above. Then the wings fold, and the dragon settles in the corner beneath the old stair and goes still. Jon sits down beside it on the cold stone floor. He does not ask permission. He simply sits, and the dragon puts its head across his legs the way it has done every night in the vault, and Jon rests his hand on the back of its neck. Ned watches them for a moment. "Come out when you are ready," he says. He steps outside with the two guards and gives each a small leather purse without ceremony. They accept it without ceremony. The older one says, "My lord." That is all. Ned waits for Jon, and when the boy comes out, they bar the tower door and cross back through the yard as the sky begins to lighten. Ned goes to the godswood instead of to bed. He sits before the heart tree in the grey of early morning, and the carved face looks down at him, and he lets himself think about the tower in dawn for the first time in weeks. He does not often let himself do this. He thinks about the small, dark chamber at the top of that tower, his sister's face, the words she said before she could say no more. He thinks about the thing she was holding besides the child. He had not understood why she pressed it into his arms. He had taken it anyway, wrapped it in his cloak alongside the infant, and carried both north without stopping to reason it through. He did not understand it then. He understands it now. She had known what the egg was, what it had been waiting for. She had pressed it into his arms because she knew her son would need it, and she trusted Ned to carry it to him even without knowing why. He sits with that for a long time while the light comes up over Winterfell. It is Robb who finds them. He has been watching Jon for 2 weeks, noticing the late nights and the way his brother comes to breakfast with a look he has not seen before, something contained, carefully held in. So he follows him. He gets to the broken tower 3 nights after the move and finds the outer door unbarred, the tower door open a crack. He pushes it open and steps inside. The dragon is awake. It is curled in the far corner beneath the ruined stair, its body filling a space a large dog might fill, its black scales catching the thin moonlight that falls through the broken roof above. Jon is sitting beside it with his hand on its flank. Both of them look up at the same moment when Robb comes through the door. Robb stops. He stands very still in the doorway and looks at the thing in the corner, and the thing in the corner looks back at him with red eyes, and the moment holds. Then Robb laughs. It comes out of him all at once, a surprised, delighted sound, the laugh of a 10-year-old boy who has just seen something impossible and found it wonderful rather than frightening. He claps a hand over his mouth immediately, and the laugh becomes a muffled noise behind his palm, but it is too late to call it back. "Jon," he says, and his eyes are bright. "Jon, what is that?" Jon looks at him for a moment. "You followed me." "Obviously." Robb is already crossing the floor, moving carefully, watching the dragon the way you watch something you want to be closer to. "Jon, is that a dragon?" Before Jon can answer, the door behind Robb swings open again. Ned Stark stands in the frame. He does not shout. He looks at Robb standing in the middle of the broken tower with his mouth open, and he looks at Jon sitting with the dragon, and he breathes in once through his nose. Then he steps inside and closes the door behind him. "Robb," he says. Robb turns. The delight in his face goes careful when he sees his father's expression, but it does not go away entirely. He straightens up. Ned looks at him for a long moment. "You understand what it means," he says, "that you are standing in this room." Robb looks at the dragon and back at his father. "Yes, my lord." "Then you understand what you will say when you leave it." "Nothing," Robb says. He says it without hesitation, and means it. He has grown up watching his father, and he knows what an oath is and what it costs not to keep one. "Not a word. I swear it by the old gods and the new. Ned holds his gaze a moment longer. Then he nods once, the way he does when something is settled. The three of them stand in the broken tower in the dark, the dragon watching from its corner with patient red eyes, and the secret of Winterfell grows by one more keeper. In King's Landing, the Master of Whisperers knows about the sounds before anyone else thinks to mention them. His little birds are everywhere. They are kitchen boys and stable hands' daughters, and the children of servants who belong to lords who belong to the great web of the realm. And they listen the way children listen, without agenda, without judgment, because they do not always understand what they are hearing. They only know that certain men will pay for certain kinds of news, and they have learned which kinds. The fragment that reaches him this evening is small. A girl in a village, a half-mile from Winterfell, who helped her mother carry washing up to the castle twice a week and heard the laundresses talking. Strange sounds from the old sealed tower. Lord Stark seen crossing the yard before dawn. Servants who had coin they did not have before, and would not say where it came from. Nothing definitive. Only the texture of a thing that is being kept quiet. The Master of Whisperers sits very still in his chambers and rolls the parchment between his fingers, and thinks. He is good at thinking. He is, in fact, exceptional at it, which is why a man born with nothing in a foreign country now sits on the small council of Westeros and knows more of its secrets than any other living person. The sounds from the sealed tower in Winterfell. Lord Stark's unexplained coin. He does not know what this is yet, but he knows how things that are being kept quiet feel, and this feels like something he would very much like to understand. That evening, he pays a quiet call on the hand of the king. Jon Arryn is 73 years old and has been in the service of the realm long enough to have grey in his beard when many of the current council's members were still in swaddling. He is alert in the way old men who have survived long are alert. Not quick, but thorough, with the patience of someone who has learned that most important things reveal themselves to those who wait. He receives the Master of Whisperers in his private solar without ceremony. What the Master of Whisperers tells him, he tells carefully. Not as fact, not as anything close to certainty. He mentions the fragment. He mentions the strangeness of the coin, the sealed tower, the hour at which Lord Stark crosses his own yard. He frames it as something that does not yet make sense, and says it in the voice of a man who is simply being thorough, simply sharing what comes across his table as is his duty. Jon Arryn listens without interrupting. When the visitor has finished and taken his leave, the old hand sits for a while in his chair, and then he draws out a sheet of parchment and writes a brief note to Winterfell. It is short and says almost nothing, which is how Jon Arryn communicates the things that matter most. It says, "I am hearing things. Tell me what to think of them." He seals it himself and gives it to his own man to send, not to the rookery. 3 floors below and 2 wings to the east, Robert Baratheon sits on the Iron Throne in the way he always sits on it now, which is sideways, with one leg draped over the arm, his chin propped on his fist, looking at the middle distance, while a very small and very patient man explains to him the projected shortfalls of the royal treasury for the 3rd quarter of the year. Peter Baelish is 25 years old and has been master of coin for 2 years, and he is already very good at it, which is more than could be said for the arrangement he found when he arrived. He speaks with the measured, unhurried confidence of someone who knows his information is correct and who has learned not to care whether the person he is speaking to is listening or not, because the ledgers do not change based on the king's interest in them. Robert is not listening. He is thinking about the hunting in the Kingswood and whether the weather will hold through the moon's turn, and whether he can convince Sir Barristan to come along this time. Yes, Robert says, when Baelish reaches a natural pause. Handle it. Baelish handles it. He has always handled it. He tucks the report under his arm, bows with exactly the depth of bow the situation requires, and withdraws. Cersei Lannister receives her information 3 days later, from a source that is not the master of whisperers, and is not the hand of the king, and is, as her sources generally are, entirely her own. Her golden hair catches the lamplight as she reads the note. She reads it twice. The Lord of Winterfell has been crossing his inner yard before dawn for a month, always to the same tower, always alone or with the boy. Servants have been dismissed or moved to other duties without explanation. There are sounds from the sealed tower that no one in the castle will speak of directly. She sets the parchment down and looks at the lamp for a moment. Then she folds it carefully and puts it in the place where she keeps things that have not yet become useful. She does not know what Eddard Stark is hiding in the north. She does not need to know yet. What she knows is that he is hiding something, and that men who hide things are men who can be pressed, and men who can be pressed are eventually useful to someone who knows how to press them. She will wait. She will watch. She is patient in the way that cold stone is patient, and she has time. In Winterfell, the dragon is no longer small. It is the size of a war horse now, broader across the chest than any horse, with a wingspan that fills the broken tower from wall to wall when it stretches in the morning. Its neck is long. Its tail sweeps the flagstones when it turns. The black scales have settled into armor plates that catch no light at all, only absorb it, so that the creature in the corner of the tower looks less like something present and more like a hole in the world where something should be. When it breathes, the air in the tower is warmer than the air outside, by 10 degrees at least. Ned comes to the tower door and looks in, and looks at what has grown from something Jon could hold in one hand on his name day. And he turns away and thinks. He thinks for a long time. Then he calls Jon to his solar. He tells the boy what he has decided. Jon will not ride south. Jon will not visit the Eyrie, will not accompany the family to White Harbour, will not travel to any tournament or gathering or Lord's Hall where his absence from Winterfell might be remarked upon. Whatever schooling Jon needs will be done at Winterfell. The maester is here, the yard is here, the dragon is here. These walls are where Jon stays. Jon looks at him across the table. For how long? He says. Ned holds his gaze. For as long as it takes. Jon is quiet for a moment, looking at his own hands. He is 10 years old, and he has already learned not to argue with his father on the things his father has decided. He looks up. I understand, he says. Ned nods. He does not say what both of them know, which is that he does not yet know what it takes means, or how long that will be, or whether the walls of Winterfell will be enough when the time comes that they cannot be. He only knows it is not yet time for anything else, and that in King's Landing, the people who are paid to notice things have begun to notice. The secret does not break all at once. It frays. A steward's boy slips out of Winterfell one afternoon, 3 months after the name day. He is 14, and he has coin in his pocket that he did not earn sweeping floors, and he does not wonder too hard about where it came from. He walks to the village and drinks at the tavern and talks, because he is 14 and has coin and has been keeping something strange locked inside him for weeks. And keeping strange things inside you at 14 is harder than it looks. He tells the room that Lord Stark keeps a monster in the broken tower. black as night, red eyes and wings. He has heard it himself in the night. He says it in the way of someone who needs to say it, more than he needs to be believed. No one believes him. He goes home. Then a laundress tells a carter the same thing. A stable hand tells his father. A kitchen girl who carried trays to the tower and was turned away at the door by a guard who would not meet her eyes tells anyone who will listen that there is something alive in there that is not supposed to be alive. 4 accounts, independent, from 4 people who do not know each other and have no reason to coordinate. The story begins to travel. It reaches White Harbor within a fortnight, carried along the roads with the traders and the drovers and the men who move between places for a living, passed from mouth to mouth the way all the best stories are, gaining detail with each telling, losing nothing. Lord Stark's monster. Wings and red eyes and scales, black as a closed well. By the time it reaches White Harbor, it has grown, as stories do, into something half the North is murmuring about in the corners of inns. From White Harbor, a raven carries it south. The ravens are fast under a good wind. In 3 weeks, the story is in King's Landing. Jon Arryn, Hand of the King, reads the dispatch in the small council chamber with 3 other members present. He reads it in the flat, careful voice of a man who is choosing not to inflect what he is reading because he does not yet know what he thinks of it. When he finishes, the room is silent. Robert Baratheon stares at him from across the table. "Read it again," he says. Jon Arryn reads it again. Robert stares at him for a very long time after that. The flush is already in his face, the dark color that comes into it when he is working through something that has surprised him, which is not a thing that happens often. He is a large man, broader than he was 10 years ago, in ways that are not all muscle, and he fills his chair in the way he fills most rooms, with presence and noise that does not quite settle. Right now he is very quiet. "We ride north," he says. It is not a question. It is not a suggestion. It lands in the room the way Robert's decisions always land, heavy and final, with the particular weight of a man who has been a king long enough to have stopped expecting disagreement and a warrior long enough to have never wanted it. Jon Arryn nods, because that is what you do. The ravens go out before nightfall. At Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister reads his own version of the report by the fire in his private solar. He reads it seated, alone, without expression. He reads it twice. Then he sets it on the table face down and pours himself a cup of wine. He doesn't send for anyone. He doesn't dictate a response. He sits with his wine and his fire and thinks, because Tywin Lannister has built everything he has built on the understanding that information is only valuable if you respond to it correctly, and responding correctly requires thinking before acting, which is a discipline that has served him better than any army. The word dragon does not appear in the report. Whoever wrote it was careful, or frightened, or both. The description is unmistakable. Wings, scales, the black of it, and the red of its eyes, and the heat it gives off, enough to warm a tower from the inside. Tywin turns his wine cup once in his hand. There is a Baratheon sitting on the Iron Throne whose best friend is Eddard Stark, who has apparently been hiding something in his northern castle for months. There is a Targaryen pretender in Essos, with no army and no money and no dragon. And there is, somewhere in the north, a boy and a creature that no one in the living world has seen. Tywin drinks his wine and thinks about what this means for his grandchildren. In the city of Pentos, across the narrow sea, Viserys Targaryen is not thinking at all. He moves through the rooms of a Pentoshi Magister's manse in a fury that has no particular direction, which is the kind of fury Viserys is best at. He is 17 years old, and he has spent every one of those 17 years being told he is the last hope of a dynasty, the blood of old Valyria, the heir to the dragon throne, and then being shown over and over that the world does not agree. He has no army. He has no allies that cannot be bought away. He has a 10-year-old sister and a magister's charity, and a name that means something to him and to almost no one else. And now someone in Westeros has a dragon. He says it again to the room, to Daenerys, to the walls. Someone has a dragon, and it is not him. They have been robbed. Someone has taken what belongs to his blood, his name, his house, and he will not forget this, and he will not forgive it, and whoever did this will answer for it when he comes into his own, and he is coming into his own. This is not over. This has never been over. Daenerys stands at the edge of the room and watches her brother with the look she has learned to wear around him, which is small and still and takes up as little space as possible. She is 10 years old, and she has learned that the storm runs itself out faster if you do not stand in its way. Viserys' voice fills the room and bounces back off the walls. In Winterfell, the Raven arrives on a Tuesday morning in the hour before breakfast. Ned reads it standing at his solar window. He reads it once, and then holds it, and looks at the grey northern sky for a long time without seeing it. The hand of the king's seal is on the outside. The words on the inside are Jon Arryn's careful, measured script, and they say what Ned already knew was coming. Robert Baratheon is riding north. He will be at Winterfell within the month. He wants to see with his own eyes what the north is hiding. Ned sets the letter down on the table. He stands there for a moment. Then he crosses the yard in the cold morning air and walks to the broken tower and lifts the bar and steps inside. The dragon looks up when he enters. It fills most of the floor now, black and vast and still in the way that large things are still, with the particular weight of a thing that is at rest, because it chooses to be. Jon is sitting with his back against the tower wall and his hand on the creature's neck, and he looks up too. Ned stands in the doorway and looks at them both. "The king is coming," he says. Jon is quiet for a moment. The dragon watches Ned with patient red eyes. "What do we do?" Jon asks. Ned looks at his ward. He looks at the dragon. He does not have an answer yet, and they both know it. And the silence between them is the kind that holds everything they have not yet said. "We tell him the truth," Ned says finally. "Some of it." The royal party comes through the gates of Winterfell on a grey morning at the end of the moon's turn, banners flying above the column in the northern wind. Ned sees the crowned black stag on gold before he sees anything else, the banner snapping at the head of the column as the riders pour through the gate and into the yard. He stands with Catelyn at his right and Robb at his left. Catelyn is composed beside him in the way she is always composed when the castle demands it of her. Jon is not here. Ned told him 3 days ago to stay in the broken tower and not come out for any reason until he was sent for. Robert comes through the gate and fills the yard the way he fills every space. He is larger than 10 years ago, heavier, his dark beard shot with grey, but the arms on the reins are still a warrior's arms. He swings down and crosses the yard and grips Ned by both arms. "Ned!" He is already looking around, already taking stock. "Where is this tower?" Ned holds his gaze. "There is time for that," he says. "Come inside, eat, rest." Robert looks at him for a moment with the full attention of those dark eyes, and then he nods, and the moment passes into the business of the arrival, the stabling of horses and the carrying of luggage, and the long process of a royal party finding its rooms. Behind Robert, Jaime Lannister rides in gleaming white plate, golden-haired and straight-backed as a man carved from good stone, and does not look at the broken tower at all. The feast that first night is loud and large, and Robert sits at the high table with a cup refilled faster than a man should drink, already redder and louder with each round. He asks after old friends and listens to none of the answers and demands more wine. Then he asks where Ned's bastard is. He says it in a voice that is meant to carry, the way Robert says most things, and he frames it lightly, as a question between old friends, a jest about northerners and their strange dealings. He has heard stories, he says, about the boy. The tone is light. The eyes that move to Ned's face when he says it are not. Jon is unwell, Ned says. Robert looks at him for a moment. He does not push it. He picks up his cup and drinks and says something to the man on his other side, and the table moves on. But he does not forget. He is Robert Baratheon, who has forgotten very few things in his life, and this is not the kind of thing he forgets. At the lower end of the table, Robb sits still and watches the king. He has grown up under a father who holds rooms with silence rather than sound, and he is trying to understand what kind of man this other kind is. The man who rules the realm, who will go to the tower eventually and see what is in it. Theon Greyjoy sits beside him with his cup and his usual expression, which is the expression of a young man who is watching everything and pretending to watch nothing. But his gaze keeps going to the high table and then to the direction of the yard, to the tower he cannot see from here. He has known for a month what is in that tower. And he thinks, not for the first time since he found out, about what it means to be Balon Greyjoy's son, about what his father would say, about what a dragon means to a man with a fleet and old grievances and nothing to lose. He drinks his wine and says nothing. 2 hours before first light, Robert Baratheon cannot sleep. He rises and wraps a cloak around his shoulders and walks the walls, the way he does when the night will not let him alone. Winterfell is quiet at this hour. The guards nod when he passes. He makes the full circuit and then stops. There is a sound. It comes from inside the walls, from the direction of the old tower at the far end of the inner ward. He stands still and listens. It is not wind, though it sounds like wind at first. It has a direction, a rhythm, something pressing against the air, slow and heavy, the way sails sound when the wind changes, except there is no sail that makes that sound, and Winterfell's walls are stone. He goes toward it. The broken tower door is not locked. It is barred, but the bar is on the outside, and he lifts it without difficulty and steps inside. The darkness inside is not complete. There is enough moonlight coming through the broken roof to show the shape of the space, and the shape of the space is mostly taken up with something very large and very black and very still. It crouches in the far corner, below the ruined stair with its wings folded and its head up, watching him. Its eyes catch the moonlight and hold it, amber in the dark, slow and patient, as something that has no need to hurry. Jon stands beside it. He has his back against the wall and his hand on the creature's neck, and he is looking at the king without moving. Neither of them moves. Robert stands in the doorway and looks at the dragon. He has been afraid of very few things in his life. Not at the Trident, not at Storm's End, when the Tyrells had them starved to shadows. He has always met what was in front of him with the same blunt force. This is different. The creature does not move. It watches him the way very old things watch newcomers, with a patience that has no urgency in it, because it is not afraid of him either. The amber eyes hold his. The chest rises and falls with a slow breath, and the air in the tower is noticeably warmer than the air outside, and it is the size of a cart horse, and it is real, and the last one died 140 years ago. He stands there for a long time. Then he steps into the room. One step. He stops. The dragon watches him. Robert looks at it. He looks at Jon, and the boy looks back at him with grey eyes that do not waver, and Robert looks at the dragon again. He walks toward it until he is close enough to reach out and touch it. He doesn't reach out. He stands there. He says something. It is quiet. Too quiet for Jon to hear from the wall. Too quiet for anyone to hear. Just a handful of words in the dark of the tower, directed at a creature that cannot speak back. And his face, when he says it, is not a king's face, and not a warrior's face. It is something else. Then he turns and walks out of the tower without looking at Jon again. Ned is waiting for him in the great hall. He has been waiting since he heard Robert's footsteps on the stair. He is sitting at the long table in the dark, with no cup and no candle, and when Robert comes through the door and sees him, he does not look surprised. He does not look anything. He looks like a man who has known this was coming, and is still not quite ready for it. Robert crosses the hall and sits down across from him. He picks up the cup that has been left on the table and holds it without drinking. He looks at Ned. The flush has gone from his face. He looks older than he looked at supper. He looks very tired. "Tell me everything," he says. Ned tells it straight, the way he has always told hard things. He begins with the Tower of Joy, because that is where the truth begins, and because, if Robert is going to hear this at all, he deserves to hear it from the start, rather than from the middle, where everything will seem like a lie. He tells Robert about riding south after the war with 6 men at his back, about the 3 Kingsguard waiting at the base of a tower in dawn, men who should have been with the king or with the prince or anywhere else in the realm, and were there instead, about the fight, about climbing the stairs after. "She was alive when I reached her," Ned says. "She was dying, but she was alive." Robert is very still across the table. "She was not a prisoner," Ned says. "She hadn't been a prisoner. Whatever you believed, whatever we all believed, it was not what we thought. She had gone with him. She had chosen." Robert rises from his seat. He does not strike Ned. He gets to his feet and puts both hands on the table and leans over it and looks at Ned with a face that is fighting itself in ways that are not entirely unlike the fighting a man does when something he has held inside for years begins to come loose all at once. He is breathing hard through his nose. When he speaks, his voice is careful in the way that men's voices are careful when they are choosing not to shout. "Rhaegar stole her," Robert says. "He took her from me, from her family. He was a—" "No," Ned says. The word sits between them. Robert looks at him. He sits back down slowly, the way a very large man sits when his legs are not entirely reliable. He picks up his cup. He does not drink from it. He turns it in his hands. "There was a ceremony," Ned says, "before a heart tree, because she would not be married in a sept. A septon witnessed it and wrote of it, and his journal is in the citadel somewhere, unread, and I cannot prove any of this to you. I cannot prove it to anyone. But I was there when she told me, and she was dying, and she had no reason to lie." He lets that settle for a moment. "She loved him," Ned says. "I do not ask you to forgive that. I only ask you to understand what it means for the boy." Robert is not looking at him. He is looking at the cup in his hands, at the table, at the dark window, where the night still presses against the shutters. "Jon is not my bastard," Ned says. "He is Rhaegar's son. Trueborn, if the ceremony holds. Heir to the Targaryen name, if there is anything left of that name to inherit." The silence that follows is long and particular. It is the kind of silence that has weight. Robert sets the cup down. When he looks up, his face has changed. The careful stillness is gone, and what is under it is something older and raw. The grief and the rage wound around each other so tightly that even Robert, who is not a man given to subtlety, cannot fully separate them. "The boy must die," Robert says. He says it flatly, almost gently, the way he might say a thing that is obvious. "Ned, you know that." It is the only clean answer. A Targaryen heir with a dragon is a war waiting to happen. Every lord in Westeros with an old grievance will come to that boy's banner the moment the word is out. You know this. Ned looks at him. "You would kill Lyanna's son," Ned says. The room goes very quiet. Robert sits with that. He does not speak. The flush has drained out of his face and left something else, something pale and strange, and he picks up the cup again and drinks this time, a long swallow, and sets it down and gets up and walks to the window. He stands there with his back to Ned and his forehead almost touching the cold stone of the wall. Lyanna. The name is a door that nothing else can open. He was 17 when he met her. He has built a war on her memory, built a throne on it, built a life on it in the way of men who take a grief and make it the foundation of everything, because some griefs are too large to carry and too important to set down. He loved her before she was taken. He has loved her every year since she was gone. He has loved her in the way that men love what they cannot have, which is the most permanent kind. He turns around. "What does the boy know?" he says. His voice has changed. The rage has not left it, but it has gone deeper, lower, become something he is keeping in. "Nothing," Ned says. "He knows he is my bastard. He knows the dragon chose him, and he does not know why. He has never been told his mother's name." Robert looks at him for a long moment. He does not know. No. Robert walks back to the table and sits. He looks at Ned in the pre-dawn grey, in the cold, empty hall, and the distance between them across the table feels like something that was not there before this night. "And the dragon," Robert says. "If we killed the boy, we do not know what the dragon would do," Ned says. "No one has managed a dragon in 140 years. No one knows what it does when the person it has bonded to is killed. The histories suggest it does not take it calmly." "No," Robert says. "I don't suppose it would." He is quiet for a long time. Long enough that the darkness in the shutters begins to shift, to lighten at the edges. The particular grey that comes before, the grey that comes before dawn. Ned waits. He has always been good at waiting. He has waited 10 years for this conversation, and he can wait a little longer. Robert finally speaks. "I will not kill the boy," he says. "Not today." He says it like a man making a decision he does not fully make, like someone who has chosen the left path at a fork and is still looking back over his shoulder at the right. "I need to think. There are things to consider. The succession, the other houses, that damned boy in Essos with no army and no sense." He pauses. "And I need to consider Lyanna." He looks up at Ned. "She asked you to protect him," Robert says. "That is what she made you promise." Ned does not answer, because it is not a question. Robert looks old in the grey light of the coming dawn. He looks older than he did at supper, older than he did when he came through the gate, older than Ned has ever seen him. He gets to his feet and picks up his cup and looks at it, and sets it back down empty. "We will not speak of this tonight," Robert says. "We will not speak of it to anyone. And when I have decided what must be done, Ned," he stops. He looks at his oldest friend. "I will tell you, before I tell anyone else. I owe you that much." He walks out of the hall. Ned sits alone in the dark for a long time, listening to Winterfell settle around him, and the first pale edge of morning comes through the shutters and falls across the empty cup and the empty table, and the truth that is no longer only his. Robert's party rides south out of Winterfell on a morning that is cold and flat, and says nothing about what happened inside the castle's walls. Jaime Lannister rides at the king's right shoulder in his white cloak, the way he always rides, straight-backed and watchful. He has heard the servants talk. You cannot spend 3 days in a castle and not hear servants talk, and this castle has been talking about the broken tower for months. He knows something with wings lives in it. He knows the boy was kept away from the feast. He knows, in the way that you know things when you have spent years watching powerful men, that Robert Baratheon came to the high table the first night at Winterfell and left the last morning a different weight. He watches Robert's face on the ride south. Robert rides without speaking. He rides the way he sometimes rides after a battle, present in his body and somewhere far away in his mind at the same time. He answers questions directly and volunteers nothing. He does not laugh. Jaime watches and says nothing and waits. It is a 3-week ride back to King's Landing, and by the time the Red Keep's towers rise above the Blackwater, Robert has still said nothing. Cersei is in her solar when he returns. She receives him with the correct warmth of a queen, welcoming her husband back from the north, the practiced ease of a woman who has been doing this for 10 years, and she watches his face the way Jaime watched it, and reads the same absence there, the same sealed quality, the door that is closed. She asks how the north was. He says cold. She asks if he saw what the rumors described. He says he needs to rest. That evening she sends for her own man. He comes after dark. She reads his report at her writing table with a single candle burning and her golden hair loose over her shoulder. She reads it without expression. A boy in Winterfell. A dragon, confirmed by 3 independent accounts from within the castle walls. The boy keeps it, sleeps beside it, is never burned. Lord Stark confined the boy to the grounds before the king arrived. Lord Stark would not let anyone see him. She sets the paper down and looks at the candle. Joffrey is 7 years old. He is the crown prince. He is Cersei's firstborn and her purpose and the answer to everything she has endured in 10 years of a marriage she didn't want. And there is a boy in the north with dragon's blood in him, and a living dragon at his heel. She goes very still for a long time. Then she picks up the paper and burns it in the candle. She goes to Jaime's chamber, past the second bell. He is awake. He is always awake when she comes to him late, as though he knows before she arrives. She sits and tells him what she has confirmed, quietly, in full. Jaime listens with his head back against the wall, looking at the ceiling, the way he listens to things he wants to understand completely before he speaks. When she finishes, he is quiet for a long time. He thinks about the throne room, and about Aerys Targaryen, and about the moment Jaime's sword went in, and what it has meant every day since. He thinks about what a dragon means to a house that was supposed to have ended. "We must handle this carefully," he says. Cersei looks at him. "How carefully?" "Carefully enough that no one knows we are handling it at all," Jaime says. In the Tower of the Hand, Robert goes to Jon Arryn the evening after he arrives. The Hand of the King is 73 years old, and has been in the service of the realm for longer than most of its current occupants have been alive. He sits in his chair in his solar, with his white hair and his watchful eyes, and he listens to Robert the way he has always listened to Robert, with complete attention and without interrupting, the way men listen when they have learned that the first thing said is rarely the whole of it. Robert tells him enough. "A boy in the north," he says. "A dragon, real and alive, bonded to the boy. The question of the boy's blood he gives only an outline, because he is not ready to say all of it. Not even to Jon Arryn. Not yet. But enough. Enough for an old man who has known him since boyhood to understand the shape of what he is carrying. When Robert finishes, Jon Arryn is quiet for a moment. Then he says, "What does honor demand of you, my lord?" Robert looks at him. "That is not a simple question." "No," Jon Arryn says. "It rarely is. That is why I asked it." Robert gets up and stands at the window and looks out over the city and the harbour and the sea. "I told Ned I would think," Robert says. "I am thinking." "Good," Jon Arryn says. "Think carefully. And then, my lord." He pauses, the careful pause of a man choosing his words precisely. "Think about what it means if you do nothing. The world will not stop moving, because you have decided not to decide." Robert looks at him over his shoulder and says nothing. At Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister reads a private raven in his solar after supper, and then feeds it to the fire without calling for anyone. The news is not from the king. He did not expect it to be. He stands at the fire and watches the parchment curl and blacken, and then he pours himself wine and sits and thinks. He thinks until the candles are low. The boy is 10 years old. The dragon is real, but has been hidden by a man who has spent the past year doing nothing but hiding it, which means the man is frightened of it, or frightened of what it means, or both. The proof of the boy's blood, if any exists, is not public. The king has come and gone from Winterfell and issued no proclamation and drawn no sword. This means Robert has also decided not to decide. Tywin drinks his wine. There is time. The boy is 10 years old, and the dragon is in a tower in the north, and the only people who matter yet are too frightened, or too cautious, or too loyal to move. You do not commit a house to an action while the situation is still becoming what it will be. You watch. You wait. You let other people make the first mistakes. He goes to bed, and the fire burns down behind him, and he has not written a single word. In his chambers in the Red Keep, the Master of Whisperers sits in the dark and reassembles what he knows. The boy in Winterfell is real. The dragon is real. The bond is real and confirmed. He has been suspecting something was wrong in the north for months, and the picture that has assembled itself is more interesting than even he expected when he first heard the rumors from his little bird in that village. He considers the game board. In Essos, there is a young man named Viserys who is 17 years old, unstable, getting worse, and has no allies, no army, no money, and no dragon. He is becoming a problem in the way that frightened, angry, impotent young men with famous names become problems, loudly, carelessly, in ways that draw attention without achieving anything. And in Westeros, hidden in a tower in the north, there is a legitimate Targaryen heir by blood, with a living dragon bonded to him, being protected by the most honest man in the realm. The Master of Whisperers sits very still in the dark. He begins to think about timing. In the water gardens of Sunspear, Doran Martell watches children play in the pools and thinks about a rumor that arrived on a merchant captain's tongue 3 weeks ago. The captain had put in at a port on the Westerosi coast, as captains do, and had heard the talk in the dockside taverns, as men do who are paid to listen, and had carried it south on the trade winds, along with his cargo of cloth and salt fish, and northern amber. A dragon in the north. In Winterfell, of all places, Lord Stark's stronghold, the grey northern pile where the Starks have sat for 8,000 years. A dragon in a tower. Doran is a patient man. He did not become the patient man he is by treating rumours as facts. But he has had this particular rumour confirmed now by a second source and a third, and he sits in the warm afternoon sun of dawn and watches the children splash and laughs at the right moments and thinks. He thinks about Elia. His sister had dark eyes and a quick smile, and the kind of constitution that the Dornish sun didn't always bless its children with, fragile in the body but not in anything else. She had gone north to be Rhaegar's wife, and borne him 2 children, and been murdered in her own home by a man the size of a mountain, while her children were killed around her. The youngest had been an infant. The eldest had barely learned to walk. Doran has waited 10 years. He has waited because he is good at waiting, and because Dorne alone cannot move against the Iron Throne, and because the right moment has not yet come. He has watched Robert Baratheon sit on a throne he won with a hammer and rule it badly and build enemies the way other men build walls, 1 stone at a time, and he has watched and waited. A dragon in the north. He says nothing to his household. He excuses himself from the afternoon by the pools and goes to his solar and sits at his writing table and takes out a sheet of parchment. He writes 1 letter, careful and short, to a private contact in the Vale. Not to Ned Stark. He does not write to Ned Stark directly, but the letter is pointed in that direction, the way you point someone at a door without leading them through it. He seals it with plain wax and gives it to a courier he trusts absolutely, and then he goes back to the pools and watches the children play. He can wait a little longer. In Pentos, Viserys Targaryen cannot wait at all. He is 18 years old, and he has been waiting for his whole life, and waiting is something he was never built for. He sits in a Pentoshi Magister's manse, with wine he has not paid for, and a company of merchants who are politely pretending to listen. And he talks about dragons and thrones, and what is owed to him by birth and blood. He has heard the rumour. Someone in Westeros has a dragon. He has been saying, for weeks now, to anyone who will listen, that this is his, that it was stolen from him, that the Starks of Winterfell have taken what belongs to the blood of old Valyria, and he will not forget, and he will not forgive. And when he sits on the Iron Throne, he will remember every name of every person who stood between him and what was his. Across the room, Daenerys watches her brother with the silver-white hair and the rising voice and the flushed face, and she thinks. She is 11 years old, and she has been thinking quietly for a year now, in the way that children begin to think when they understand that the world is not the shape they were told it was. Viserys has told her all her life what they are and what they are owed. She has believed him because she had nothing else to believe. But she has been listening to the rumour too, and what she thinks about, privately, in the margins of her mind while her brother rages, is not the stolen birthright. She thinks about the dragon choosing someone. She thinks about what it would mean to be chosen. At Winterfell, Jon is 11 years old, and taller than he was a year ago, and steadier in a way that is harder to describe, as though the year of keeping the secret and keeping faith with the dragon has settled something in him that was unsettled before. He moves through the castle with a quietness that is not the quietness of the boy who tried to take up less space. This quietness is different. It has weight in it. The dragon follows him through the yard when he gives it room too, black and vast and unhurried, and the servants who have known about it for a year still give it a wide berth, but have stopped pretending not to see it. One evening in the Godswood, Jon sits beside his father in the dark and says, "Who was my mother?" He has asked before. He has always been told it is not a question for now, but this time he does not frame it the usual way. This time he says, "The dragon chose me. It chose me the night of my name day. That is not an accident, and we both know it is not an accident. And if there is a reason, I am old enough to know what the reason is." Ned is quiet for a long time. The weirwood heart tree looks down at them with its hollow eyes. The red leaves do not move. He turns and looks at Jon. He looks at him for a long moment. This boy with the dark hair and grey eyes that are stark eyes all the way down, and he thinks about a small room at the top of a tower, and the words a dying woman said, and the promise he made. "Your mother," Ned says, "was someone I loved very much. She was the bravest person I ever knew." Jon looks at him. "She made me promise to keep you safe," Ned says. "I have kept that promise." He says no more. He does not say the name, not tonight. But something in the way he says it, the weight of it, the care he takes with the words, tells Jon that the answer is larger than he expected. Jon turns and looks at the dragon, which has settled in the grass at the edge of the Godswood, and is watching them both with patient red eyes. He does not press further, but something in his face has shifted. 3 days later, a raven arrives from King's Landing. Ned reads the message in his solar alone. It is from the hand of the king, written in Jon Arryn's careful, exact hand. And it is short. The king has decided. The boy will come to King's Landing. Ned folds the letter and sits for a long time in the silence of his solar, and then he gets up and walks to the broken tower to tell Jon. Ned takes Jon to the Godswood the morning after the raven arrives. He has rehearsed the words for 2 years, and now that the moment is here, the rehearsed words are gone, and he only has the truth, which was always what he had. He sits beside the heart tree with Jon beside him, and the carved face looks down at them with its hollow eyes, and Ned says, "Your mother's name was Lyanna." Jon is very still. "Lyanna Stark," Ned says. "She was my sister." Jon looks at him. His grey eyes are working through something that has been building for 2 years of quiet questions and held back answers. Ned's sister, which makes Ned his uncle. "Then who?" Jon says, and stops. He starts again. "Who was my father?" Ned holds his gaze. "A man who is dead. A man who loved her." He pauses. "I cannot tell you his name yet. I am sorry. When the time is right, you will know everything." Jon looks at the heart tree for a long time. The red sap runs in the grooves of its carved face. The red leaves hang without moving. "Did she want this?" Jon says. "Was she?" He stops. "Did she choose?" "She chose," Ned says. "She chose all of it, including you." Jon nods once, slowly, the way a person nods when they are filing something away to return to later, when they are alone and the place is quiet enough to hold it properly. "And the dragon," Jon says. "It is from him." "Yes." "That is why it woke for me." "Yes." Jon stands and crosses to the weirwood and puts his hand on the bark of it. He stands there for a moment with his back to Ned and his hand on the ancient wood, and then he turns. "All right," he says. "When do we leave?" That night, Jon goes to the broken tower alone. The dragon fills the space under the broken roof now, filling it in the way a tide fills a harbour, taking every available corner and angle, the wings folded, but only just, the tail curled along the base of the far wall, the head resting on the flagstones near the door. It opens one eye when Jon comes in and lifts its head to watch him cross the floor. John sits with his back against the dragon's flank, the way he has sat every night for 2 years, and he tilts his head back and looks through the ragged gap in the roof at the stars. The night is clear and very cold, and the stars are close, the way they are only in the north in winter. He looks at them for a long time. He is Lyanna Stark's son, and Ned Stark's nephew, not his son. The man he has called father for 12 years was keeping a promise to a dying woman. Jon Snow. Ned Stark's bastard. Except he is not that. He does not know yet what he is instead. The dragon breathes steadily beneath him, warm and certain, its heartbeat moving through the stone of the tower floor. Jon puts his hand on the scales behind its shoulder and stays there until the stars shift. Robb comes to the tower before dawn on the morning of the departure. Jon hears him on the stairs and is already standing when he comes through the door. Robb stops and looks at the dragon, then at Jon. The two boys stand in the torchlight with 2 years of shared secret between them. Every late night and every oath. Robb's swear on the night he had walked in laughing, which seems now like a different age. "You'll come back," Robb says. Jon looks at him. "I don't know what I'll come back as." Robb nods. It is not the answer he wanted, and they both know it, and he nods anyway because he is his father's son, and he knows what it means to accept something you do not want. He crosses the floor and Jon clasps his arm and Robb clasps his, the grip of it, and they hold that for a moment. Then they let go. Neither of them speaks again. The column rides out of Winterfell's gates as the morning grey thickens toward full day. Jon at the front, Ned beside him, 20 Stark bannermen behind, and the dragon lifting off from the broken tower roof with a sound like a thunderclap, black against the pale sky, already climbing. There is no concealing it. There never was going to be. The dragon rises and circles in lazy loops above the column as they take the road south, and Jon rides at the front and watches the road, and the road ahead empties as they move. He sees it from a distance, people in doorways who look up and go inside, doors closing, children pulled back. Then, as the column passes without fire and death, the slow return, faces at windows, people edging back to the road to stare. By the third village, the doors do not close. At Winterfell's walls, Theon Greyjoy stands at the battlements and watches the column until it crests the ridge and drops out of sight, and then he stands there a while longer, looking at the ridge. He is a ward, which is a word that means hostage if you say it honestly, and he has been a ward since he was old enough to understand what the word meant. He has grown up in this castle and learned its rhythms and eaten its food and lived under Ned Stark's roof, and he has just watched Ned Stark's bastard ride out with a dragon circling his head. He thinks about the Iron Islands, about his father on the Seastone chair, about what it means to be Balon Greyjoy's son in someone else's castle while that castle's bastard rides south with a dragon. What Theon carries in his head right now is knowledge. He stays at the battlements until the cold drives him in. The way station sits 2 days south of Winterfell, a low stone building with a common room and a hearth, the kind of place that serves travellers passing through without remarking on them. When the column halts there for the night, the innkeeper is waiting in the yard. He is a small man with shaking hands, holding bread and salt on a board, and he holds it out to Jon. Not to Ned, to the boy with the dragon. Jon looks at the bread and salt. It has always been offered to Ned before, Jon at his side. This man is looking at Jon. Jon takes the bread and breaks a piece off and dips it in the salt and eats it, the way you do. "Thank you," he says. The innkeeper nods and goes back inside. Ned says nothing, which is its own kind of speech. The final night before King's Landing, they stop in open country and make a fire. The escort camps around them, and the dragon is somewhere in the dark above them, and Ned and Jon sit on either side of the fire in the quiet. "Whatever they call you in that city," Ned says, "whatever happens, remember who raised you." Jon looks at him across the fire. "Does the king know who I am?" Ned is quiet for a moment. "The king knows about the dragon. The rest," he pauses. "We'll see." Jon looks at the fire. He nods. Tomorrow, the city. Tomorrow, the court and the king and the throne and all the things that have been moving toward this since a night 2 years ago when he was 10 years old and went down into the dark and put his hands on a stone that was warm. He sits with his uncle at the fire in the last of the northern dark, and the dragon circles somewhere above them, and in the morning they ride south. The dragon reaches King's Landing before the columns does. It is flying ahead when the city comes into view through the morning haze, a black shape against the pale sky, circling wide above the rooftops and the harbour and the 7 hills, and the city below it is doing what cities do when something they cannot explain passes over them. It is stopping. Street by street, the noise and the motion that is King's Landing's constant roar goes quiet, the way water goes quiet when a stone drops into it, the stillness spreading out from each person who looks up until it has taken the whole city. On Rhaenys's hill, the dragon pit rises against the sky in its ruin. It has been a ruin for a long time. The dragons that died there, the last ones, died 140 years before this morning, and the city has grown up around the empty dome, the way a forest grows up around a burned clearing, working around it, not forgetting it. And now the shadow of the black shape crosses the dome, and the stones seem to remember something. The column reaches the gates. Jon rides through the gate of King's Landing with Ned at his side, and the city that was quiet is now filled with a different kind of sound, the low collective noise of thousands of people watching the sky at once. The dragon is directly above them, circling, its wingspan throwing a shadow across the cobblestones below. Faces line every window. People pack every rooftop and every wall and every alley mouth that gives a view of the sky. Some fall to their knees. Others run, pressing back into doorways and side streets. A small child near the gate raises both hands toward the dragon with the uncomplicated wonder of someone too young to know what they are supposed to be afraid of. Jon rides through it all without looking left or right, and his face gives nothing away. The throne room of the Red Keep is vast and cold, and very quiet when Ned walks Jon in. The Iron Throne stands at its far end, a mass of 1,000 surrendered swords welded by Aegon the Conqueror's dragon into the shape of a seat. Robert Baratheon sits in it the way he always sits in things, as though he is testing the chair for weakness. He is 38 years old and heavier than he was at Winterfell, and he looks like a man who has not been sleeping well. Ned walks in beside Jon and stops. Jon walks forward alone. He is 12 years old with dark hair and grey, stark eyes, and he looks like what he is, which is a northern boy, a Stark in everything but the name on his birth. He does not look like a prince. He does not look like the heir to anything. The herald at the door had no title to announce, because Robert gave him none, so the hall receives him in silence. Cersei Lannister stands at Robert's right hand with her golden hair and her careful face, and her eyes that are doing the thing they always do, which is take everything in and give nothing back. Jaime stands at the far edge of the chamber in white, watching the room. Peter Baelish is among the council members, a young man with a composed expression. The Master of Whisperers is also there, quiet and still, with the particular quality of attention of someone who has been waiting for this moment for longer than most people in the room. Jon stops at the foot of the dais. He looks up at Robert, and Robert looks down at him, and the room holds its breath. "My name is Jon Snow," Jon says. His voice does not waver. "I am the bastard of Ned Stark of Winterfell. I have come because the king commanded it." He pauses. "I do not seek the throne. I do not know what I seek, but the dragon is mine, and I am answerable for it, and I stand here answerable." The throne room is very quiet. Robert looks at this boy for a long time. He looks at the dark hair and the grey eyes, and the way he stands, straight and still without stiffening, the way certain people stand when they are frightened and will not show it. And he sees something in that posture that strikes him in a way he was not expecting to be struck. He sees Lyanna in it, the particular courage of her, the way she always stood. He sees it in a 12-year-old boy in the throne room of King's Landing, and it costs him more than he shows. He sees something else, too. Something around the jaw and the eyes that is not Lyanna, and is not any Stark he has ever met. He does not name it to himself. "The boy stays at court," Robert says. "The dragon goes to the dragon pit." He says it without inflection, the flat finality of a decision he has made and is done reconsidering. No announcement is made. No title is given. That is my ruling. Jon Arryn steps forward from the council line. He is 75 years old, and he moves slowly. But when he speaks, his voice is clear and carries to every corner of the room. "The law is clear, my lord," he says. "A bastard cannot inherit, cannot press a claim. As long as this boy remains Snow, there is no question of succession and no legal claim to consider." Robert looks at him. He nods once. He looks at Ned. The look lasts only a moment. It carries everything that a long conversation might carry, all the things they have said and all the things they have not, and what it says most clearly is, this is not over. But it is settled for today. Ned holds his gaze and gives the same nod back. That evening, Jon walks to the dragon pit alone. It stands on Rhaenys' hill, with its ruined dome open to the sky, the great arches still standing, though the roof that spanned them is long since gone, the stones dark with age and weather. He walks through the arch into the open space inside, and the dragon comes in behind him, landing on the broken floor with the soft, controlled impact of something that has learned to judge spaces, and settles. The ruined dome opens above them both to the evening sky. Jon sits on a fallen stone and looks up. 142 years ago, the last dragons that ever lived died in this place. He does not know the full story of that. He knows the city, the Red Keep, the throne. He knows his grandfather ruled here, and that his grandfather's name is spoken the way people speak the names of storms, quickly and not often. He knows his father fought in a war and loved a woman in Dawn who died. He does not know yet whose son he is. Not by name, not by blood in its full meaning. He is 12 years old, and he has been brought to King's Landing by a king's command, and everything else is still ahead of him, still becoming what it will be. The dragon is warm against the cooling evening air. It breathes slowly. Its red eyes are open, watching the sky above the broken dome the way it watches everything, with the patience of something that is not in a hurry, because it bonded to his blood on a Nameday 2 years ago, and it is not going anywhere. Jon puts his hand on the scales behind its ear, the way he always does, and the dragon leans into it the way it always does, and the city sounds of King's Landing rise and fall outside the broken walls, and he is very far from home, and that is enough for now. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like,